Hello and welcome to another episode of Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged. Here at Talksicology, we talk all things addiction, recovery, and mental health. Tonight's guest, founder of Sans Bar, Chris Marshall. I'm your co-host, Jason Cabello, and as always, your host and mine, Joseph Gorordo.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another, the latest, the greatest episode of Talksicology, your favorite and the greatest live streaming podcast on addiction, recovery, and mental health in the entire universe. Happy to have you guys back. Welcome to our new viewers. Welcome back to our old viewers. Jason's mom is watching, even though Jason is not with us today, so we appreciate you, Nancy. But yeah, as you notice, I am by myself today, and actually I'm not in my regular studio, so I have this very boring white wall behind me. But yeah, I am on the road today for work in Dallas, Texas, and Jason, who we love and we miss, is on the road in Nashville, Tennessee today, doing some stuff for Recovery Unplugged. He actually went up there to film Sober Sessions, which is like this, concert series that has been resurrected from Recovery Unplugged's past. And they had an amazing concert out there in Nashville last night. Everybody said it was a great time. Sober space, over 300 people coming together, listening to some music and having a good time in recovery. So Jason, keep up the good work. And welcome to all our viewers. As you guys know, we love to keep it really interactive. So wherever you're joining us from, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, let us know where you're from. Feel free to chime in during the conversation. And, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in there, and I'll try to get to all of them as we go through our show. You guys are really going to love today's guest. His name is Chris Marshall. He's the founder of Sans Bar. But we'll get to him in just a second. Before we get to our guest, this is normally the part where myself and Jason would have some lovely banter. And I feel the need to honor that by just kind of talking for a little bit. I've found a phenomenon recently. Maybe you guys have been seeing this. We've all heard about the COVID pandemic stress, and we all kind of the world kind of collectively has been through something over the past 2 years. But my wife pointed out a phenomenon to me that she's in these mom groups, and she's seeing now where at least here in Texas, you can barely tell COVID ever happened. But now seems to be a time where a lot of people are kind of falling apart a little bit. She said in her mom groups, she's seeing lots of moms reaching out for help, asking about, for therapist recommendations and asking for even psychiatric facility recommendations. And that didn't really make sense to me. And I told my office, like, well, why are people falling apart now when, for all intents and purposes, COVID's over. Y'all know what I mean. And she said that she believes that there's a lot of people who have been holding it together. And now that life is seemingly pretty close to back to normal, they're finally having the space to fall apart. And I just found that really interesting. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments if you think, how you're feeling, if you're over COVID, any, repercussions of COVID, or if you're still feeling some fears and some anxieties about it, or whatever, it's just kind of what's been on my mind. Right. But besides that, another thing that's been on my mind has been Johnny Depp, who, don't play the clip yet, Greg, but Johnny Depp, he's older than I am, but he's an actor who I've sort of grown up with, from early childhood to now. There's just always been Johnny Depp movies. And frankly, I think in my younger days, I wanted to be a little bit like Johnny Depp, especially if we're talking about his early 90s stuff, Benny and June, Crybaby, all that. Edward Scissorhands, like phenomenal guy. But he's been in the news a lot lately because of this trial going on with him and his wife Amber, or ex-wife Amber. So that brings us to our press, radio, and film segment. So Greg, roll the clip.
Press, radio, and film.
After you detoxed from the opiates, have you ever taken any opiates ever again?
No, I can't. It's no. Once you've been bit, you'll be bit again.
So I'm sorry, y'all. I know Johnny Depp's an actor, and that could be just really, really good acting. But I tend to have a really sensitive bullshit detector. And when they ask him if he's used opioids since detoxing, and he kind of pauses and smiles to himself and says no, he seems so proud. Like every time I watch it, like I get little goosebumps and kind of feel this little flicker of pride for him, you know, because if you've been keeping up with it, there's a lot of stuff about how, you know, he was detoxing on his private island with a private nurse during some movie, and that's when a lot of the issues with him and his wife happened. And you know, I've never detoxed on a private island or with a private nurse, but you know, opiate detox is definitely one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life. And but I don't think that smile was about having gotten over the detox. You know, when he stops and says, you know, smiles and says no, you know, I know how hard it is to walk away from that kind of lifestyle. I can't even imagine how much harder it is when you have all that kind of money and every resource in the world at your disposal. So, you know, some people think he's acting and that he's really not sober, but I don't care. Johnny Depp, I'm proud of you. But enough about that. Y'all didn't tune in to hear me ramble and talk about Johnny Depp. Y'all tuned in to hear some good recovery and mental health and addiction content. So it's time for us to get to our guest. Jason, who's not here today, is on the Facebook stream. But hi, Jason. We love you. Let's get to our guest. So our guest today is Chris Marshall. Chris Marshall is the founder of this amazing concept called Sands Bar, which is a you know what? I'm not even going to try and explain it to you guys. I'm going to let Chris explain it to you. Chris Marshall, welcome to the show. Hey, normally you get two people clapping. Today you just get one.
Well, I'll imagine Jason's clapping too.
Yeah. Well, he's watching the feed, so he's probably clapping somewhere in Nashville right now. Now, before we get into who you are and what you do and why you do what you do and all that good stuff, I thought we'd mix it up today and start off with a getting to know you musical question.
Okay.
So, Chris, you're going to really appreciate this graphic since you've never watched the show, but we're going to go ahead and go to the spinning wheel of sounds. Is that what we're calling it, Greg? Whatever. Roll the thing. There once was a wheel, it was a special wheel, it was a magical wheel, it was the best damn wheel, it's the spinning wheel of songs. Da-da-da-da. I made that.
That is great. And the S, oh my gosh. That is
the S? I'm glad you're the first person to say anything about the S.
Oh, come on. That's middle school, man. That's like, I hadn't seen that S since middle school.
Did you know that people have studied like the S and the origins of it and how is it that, like, where did you go to middle school, Chris?
In Houston.
Houston. All right. I went to middle school in Laredo, Texas. All right. But apparently kids in California, kids in New York, kids in Europe, we all knew how to draw that S.
Yeah.
And nobody quite knows how that got disseminated or where it came from. So wild stuff. So, okay, spinning wheel of songs. We're going to bring the wheel up on here, Chris, and it's got a bunch of different questions and prompts about music, and what better way to get to know the soul of somebody than to ask them a question about music, right? So, Greg, let's give it a spin. It says, Greg, it says a song that makes me feel alive. Okay. Are you ready? Yeah?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, tell us, Chris, what's a song that makes you feel alive and why?
Teenage Dirtbag.
Yes, Wheatus?
Yes, Wheatus.
Oh my God, from the soundtrack of 90s teen movie Loser? Starring Jason Biggs.
Is that it is Jason? Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Tell me. I gotta know. This is a wild answer.
It's the only song I can sing, and it makes me feel like I'm that age again. Like I'm just like that version of myself that's young and still like figuring out the world. And I've just never sang that song and stayed in a bad mood or even thought of like playing the song in a bad, like it's an instant, like, I don't know. It just music has that ability to like transport us back through time. And it just takes me back to like, I don't know if that's like almost high school maybe, but like definitely like that time in my life when I was just young and like, I have fun with the song. I love the song. Whenever I hear it, I sing along. Like it makes me feel alive. Absolutely.
Oh man, that's so. I actually have a powerful memory. Like when you talk about it takes you somewhere, right? I think it would be sophomore year of high school. My one of my best friends in the world had just gotten her first car, right? Because we were all like turning 16, and she got a yellow Jeep, and we had to go run an errand for her dad in the Jeep, of course, with the top off, and we blasted Teenage Dirtbag in her Jeep, and I just feel joy at that memory.
Yeah, I mean, a similar thing. My friend had a Mustang, a black Mustang, and all summer long we had a mix of songs we listened to over and over. And Teenage Dirtbag was like song number 2, next to How Bizarre.
Oh my God!
Millionaires Millionaires Club or something. OCM. That was like song number 2, and we sang our little hearts out. That was just like summertime. So I mean, the whole makes me feel like summer, makes me feel like that age again. It has that power.
Dude, all these other songs are popping in my head now. Like I think that was the same summer as like If You Steal My Sunshine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great. Yeah, I don't know. I just turned 39, so I don't know how close we are.
37.
Okay,
I'll be 38 in June. Yeah.
So I think I was already in high school by then, or maybe even not maybe.
Man, we probably sound like a bunch of old guys just now. Man, you remember the music from high school?
I don't care. It's great. I know my kids will have some Nicki Minaj song that will be their like, childhood song, or one of these songs that's popular now. Like that's just the way life is,
Absolutely. I hope that someday, like I know that like when I was in high school, there were some kids that wore like Led Zeppelin shirts and Doors shirts, and that was cool. So I'm hoping my kids will someday be wearing like, I don't know, like Sublime shirts and that'd be cool. Missy Chubb said, I was totally thinking about Steal My Sunshine. Yeah, we're vibing. Good.
What a great song. I can't stop hearing it in my head now. Like, what a great song.
Oh, man. So Chris, one thing that excited me about today is, we've met a couple times. We run in the same spheres. We're Facebook friends. But we've never really gotten the chance to like sit down. Like, I don't know a ton about you. Besides Sandsbar, right? Now, what I know, don't get me wrong, what I know, I love. But I mean, I'd love to just. Are you in recovery?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So I just celebrated 15 years, February 16th.
Oh shit! See, look. You're turning 39. I'm turning 38. You're celebrating 15. I'll be at 14 in July.
What?
right?
Yeah, knock on wood. Oh my gosh, congratulations, man.
Yeah, to you too. Yeah.
Oh
So what kind of recovery do you practice? And does your recovery today, what you do today for recovery, still look like what you did when you first got into recovery?
Yeah, short answer, no. Yeah, I got sober when I was 23. And
24.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I did the math, 24, right? So I was 23 when I stopped drinking, and yeah, I mean, the rooms really were my home. That's how I grew up. Like most of my adult life, I've been like you, like I've been alcohol free. So that was my first like society were the rooms. And I will say that as I got married and had kids and I was an LCDC for a while. All that stuff, like what I needed, the tools that I needed changed. And so I needed to go find new tool shops. And so that's what I've been doing. I always go back to the main tool shop. That's my center. But I've learned that therapy and meditation and some other things, creativity, physical exercise, like it's all part of the toolbox that I use to just maintain this way of life.
I love hearing you say that, because when I got sober, very like old school AA, right? Like Kerrville recovery community, like I love them, but there's a very specific brand of recovery out there, and it's what I needed. And there was, as got married, had kids, grew professionally, like moved to a different city. Like as life changed, my recovery started to look different. And for a long time, I had like a nagging sense of guilt, right? Like I'm not doing it the way I was taught anymore. I mean, still abstinence based, still based on spiritual principles, but not 7 meetings a week and 12 sponsees and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's something that isn't talked about enough, that if you stay sober beyond, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, your recovery has to evolve and change. Right.
Absolutely. Why would it stay the same? Like that just, and for those, if it works for you for 20 years and doing the same thing works, that's fine. But my experience was, man, I needed to expand my toolbox.
Yeah.
And that's been just true for me. And the experiences that I've had in the business I created was all based on the expansion of my toolbox. But the tools are still the basic tools, right? Like you can have, several different kinds of screwdrivers or, 4 different kinds of hammers, but they all do the same basic job. And I mean, that's just what's happened, is that my toolbox has expanded, but the basic tools, they're still the basic tools.
Absolutely. So what caused you to seek recovery? Was recovery when you were 23? Was that your first shot at it, or did you have to have a couple test runs?
And I mean, short version is like, and it's so funny that we started with music, and that's the song I picked. And as I was talking about that and talking about like being that age, I realized that somewhere in there was when I started to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Like there was a time before then when it was just about being fun and doing things that were cool and hanging out with your friends. And somewhere in there, like as I'm like thinking about all those songs, like somewhere those songs stopped being enough. And it started to be about more and needing more to feel that happiness, that lightness, right? And so that's where, again, short version of my story, started drinking at 16 because I felt like I wanted to belong to a friend group. All those guys that we were kind of in the Mustang with, they all felt right in their skin. They felt good in who they were. I always felt like I didn't belong, didn't feel like I was part of the group, even though they're my friends. I just felt different. I was the only Black kid. I was, poorer than they were. My mom's a single parent. I always looked for the ways that I was different than everyone else. And so that alcohol gave me a sense of equity. It made me feel like I belonged, like I was one of the boys. And that's just how it started for me. So, and then the story just does what it does, right?
So let me ask you something. So a lot of people talk about like, like I drank and all of a sudden like I felt like I fit in. So do you think that the alcohol was shutting off the voice telling you that you didn't fit in, or just or was it socially lubricating you? Was it helping you feel confident to fit in, or was it shutting off your narrator?
I would say it was helping me. It gave me the sense of confidence, bravado,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I was someone else, and that someone else was something that people wanted to be around and something that someone accepted, right?
Yeah.
That version of Chris was the cool Chris that like did cool things and had funny jokes and was hilarious. And like, to me, that's what alcohol did. It didn't shut off the critic, because at first there were periods of time I wasn't drinking. And in those periods of sobriety, it would hit me like, oh my gosh, these people don't like you, the real you. They like drunk you. That's who they like. That's who they're asking to come to the party with. They don't want real Chris. And so I was always aware that narrator didn't shut off. It just took a back seat to the larger than myself version. And I've said before that I think alcohol is like social steroids. And like steroids, the point of steroids, I guess, it's like to give you this physique, right? It gives you this, inflated version of yourself, and it looks great. But with that does not come any of the muscle training that you need to sustain that mass. And so you need to keep taking it to feel like you are still that, that big. And that's what it was for me. Alcohol was social steroids. And I just needed more to feel like I was still that, still that person, even though inside I knew it was all fake.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that idea, because so I never really struggled with like, I'm an adult who doesn't drink, right? Like it never bugged me, because for a long, long time, most of my friends were in recovery. I was never really around drinking unless it was like, a little bit of family at an event or at a concert or something like that. But, in the last couple of years, as my kids have gotten older, we've had to make friends with other parents, and they've wanted to be friends with us. And most adults who aren't in recovery, that's how they break the ice. That's how they start to bond. And, they have a couple drinks. And, sometimes when I'm in those situations now, that turns on for me, where it's like, oh, you're boring, like you're not being loud and wild and little. But when you said steroids, it made a lot of sense to me, because I can go to a music festival and get crazy, and end up shoeless with no shirt and sweaty and screaming and not worry about nothing, that people think I'm drunk, right? So it's like, I can get to that level. Like I can get to party Chris, right? I can get to party Joseph, but I can't take a couple drinks to get there. I got to kind of work at it.
Right. You got to work yourself up to that point. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is your experience similar to that?
Yeah. I mean, I still think that I think that was the other part of that whole social steroids that was bothersome, was that I deep down inside am not that much of an extrovert. Like I like people, but I mostly just tolerate them. Like I like people generally, but I'm also like a stay-at-home kind of person too.
Yeah.
Same. And it's been really interesting, to grow up again, like we've grown up as adults and not really have to be around people where I have to be on or do that. It's been a real interesting experience to realize, like, yeah, I'm really kind of like a home kind of person, even though I ironically own an alcohol-free bar. Like if I wasn't at work, I'd rather be at home, just relax with my family and my dogs.
Yeah. So speaking of work, I feel like one of the things I know about you is that like you came up through like the trenches of like the treatment world. Like you were like I think I want to say like integral care, or working for the state, or doing doing like that in the trench case management clinical
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I did the whole thing. Got sober at 23, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and was like, shoot, I'm gonna go back to school. I already did college, so I just had to finish up some stuff for my licensure, and just integral care. Did that for about 4 or 5 years. Went over to Nova, worked at their detox for a minute.
Oh, right on.
Did outpatient.
So you know Mark Rector.
Oh yeah. Who doesn't know Mark Rector? Come on.
Yeah. Shout out to Mark Rector.
Yeah, shout out Mark. I hadn't heard that name in a long time, man. But yeah, I mean, that's what I love. The treatment world here is so small.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I love that work, especially work with integral care with folks who just were, just real struggling, real tough. And I was able to realize that when I was working with people, I was seeing people who were like me, who struggled with that connection piece, who felt like they didn't belong. In fact, when they would talk about their lapses and return to use, hold on one second. Come here. My dog is like, sorry.
Yeah, all right.
When they be talking about their return to use, they would say like, Chris, I know alcohol isn't doing any favors for me. I know I need to stop, but I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I don't know how I'm going to have fun. I don't know how I'm going to connect with people.
Yeah. And that's, we talked about it last week on the show. Like, alcohol is the only substance that, like, when you say you don't do it, people are like, oh, well, like, what do you do instead? Like, how do you get through life without alcohol? Because you can tell them, like, you know what, I don't do heroin, and nobody's like, oh, how do you get by without heroin, right? But for alcohol, it is, it's because that social lubricant thing. So much of I mean, there's you see alcohol in religion, you see alcohol in all kinds of traditions, and it's a big part of our society. I can see a bar out my window right now. You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on alcohol as a social lubricant? Like, what do you say to guys who are getting into recovery who have that concern of like, how am I gonna have fun or talk to girls or whatever?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to realize that there's a reason why we feel so we feel like alcohol is so ubiquitous, because it is, and that's by design. So I don't know. I don't hate to like mansplain things to people, but like,
let's get into it.
But if you've ever, so I suggest, for just bonus points for anyone that's watching this, to watch the Ken Burns documentary on Prohibition. Ooh. Because that documentary, is Ken Burns, and it's just an amazing documentary. But you understand Prohibition so much better, and drug policy just in general, after watching that series. But so in the series, it talks about how after Prohibition, all these companies got together and they vowed that's never going to happen to us again. We are never going to be relegated to the past, to the back rooms, people having to sneak alcohol. Like, that's never going to happen again. And what they did after that was nothing short of like horrible, but also brilliant, because they positioned themselves at every corner of our lives. I mean, you think about how alcohol is literally at every festival, at every sporting event. I mean, you name it. Your athletes, support alcohol products. They learned so many different lessons from that experience, and they've refused to go back into the dark ages. So that's one reason why. It is by design. It's on purpose that alcohol is everywhere. So that's the first thing I would tell anyone. Like, alcohol exists everywhere because that's the point of it. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's the intention of it. Yeah. And
it's what's normal, right? It's normal.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Because it's normal and it's been normalized, right? So yeah, that's what I would tell people is like, A, that, and then B, the whole social lubricant thing. It's a short-term sense of ease. It's a short-term sense of feeling like you're in control. But obviously, it doesn't really work out in the long run. You know what I mean? So I always just tell people like, just be aware of that and just be cognizant of?
So I think, when people first get sober, right, it's pretty easy for them to find sober events to go to, right? Like, every AA club or NA club, they've got their Valentine's dance or their Christmas party or their Thanksgiving thing. And, there's lots of events where I can go as a sober person and be solely around sober people brought together because of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, especially for guys who get sober younger, it's like, I don't necessarily want to be around sober people for everything. Right. So what it seems like, how do you think, what are some words of wisdom for someone who's looking to expand their social circle beyond their recovery peeps to kind of feel a part of that larger world?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so necessary. Again, I just grew up in the rooms, and that was one thing that that I noticed is that a lot of people just stayed in that little cocoon of like only hanging out with sober people, only doing things with other sober people. And it seemed to not be effective past a certain point. At a certain point, like you weren't able to have new experiences and engage with new people because all you had was this little safety blanket of like
little echo chamber.
Right. And
yeah.
And then personally, and this is just me my own personal experience. I really got tired, 3 or 4 years into recovery. I just got tired of like every time we went out and did something, it turned back into like, yep, glad we don't do that anymore. Like, come on, man, it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years.
And real quick, we got a good question on the screen right now from Nikki Cole. She said, I'm curious if either of you have ever heard or read any of Dr. Carl Hart's books. Chris, are you familiar at all?
No.
I just want to, it's a really good question. So Carl Hart is he is a professor, real cool guy, black dude, long dreads. And he's a professor at, God, I want to say Harvard, Stanford, like one of the Ivy Leagues.
Okay.
And he does a lot of work around sociology and alcohol and drugs. And he's a big supporter of harm reduction. He's a big supporter of reforming Nikki corrected me. It is Harvard. Yeah, I was okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
If you see a picture of him, you're probably like, I've seen this dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's real controversial right now because he came out in his most recent book. He talked about how he recreationally uses heroin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like in a real kind of focused, like, all right, every 6 months I do this and this and this. I make sure I'm super safe. And that's how I use drugs because I'm an adult and I'm safe. But so I guess, Nikki, your question is, have you heard of, yes, we've heard of him.
Yes.
I can't say I've ever read one of his books. I think he's got a lot of great ideas. But I'm super liberal when it comes to like drug policy and recovery and what recovery could look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why I did leave the field. I let my license lapse. I left the field because I felt like a lot of what I wanted to see change was just never going to happen.
Yeah.
As far as like tolerance and awareness of harm reduction and things around that, right? Like I really do ascribe to an all pass mindset. I really do believe that it's really all pass. And that didn't always jive with the places I was working with. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I totally get that. But I just saw that there was just such a need for a path forward for people who did not identify as needing to go into the rooms. And there just was like, it was very binary. Even, 5 years ago, it was still very binary that, hey, you either do this 12-step program or that there's nothing else for you. And all I wanted was just there to be other options. And I wanted there to be real, actual options for discharge planning. So when I'm writing, I don't know how much has changed in the past 5 years, but when I used to write discharge plans, it was like go to 12 meetings a day, we'll attend individual counseling sessions, and nowhere on that discharge plan was there anything about the social piece of their lives, or how we were going to increase the fun in their life. And I believe fun is a key performance indicator of overall health, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's hard. It's, if you look at kind of hierarchy of needs, if your needs are met, it's easy to have fun. If your basic needs aren't being met, you're not having much fun.
Absolutely.
I know very few people who are struggling to get those basic needs met and they're having fun. So that was like my working theory. And it was just like, okay, I can't just believe this and then copy paste, go to 12 meetings a week and, talk to 3 sober friends. You have to create a space where people can go and practice how to be an alcohol-free person in society.
Love it. It's just for a field update, right? I think things are starting to move in the right direction to where, in treatment, we get these buzzwords for a while, right? Like EMDR was a buzzword for a while, or like equine therapy was like the thing. Like if you didn't have a horse, I don't know what you're doing, right? And I'm not knocking any programs that do those things, right? There's some phenomenal programs that do those things, but they kind of get to be the buzz.
Yeah.
And I feel like lately that kind of trend is shifting towards like the term individualized, right? Individualized care, customized care, whatever you want to call it. Right. And some centers do it better than others, but the industry, the research, the federal guidance, the dollars, the insurance companies are all pushing towards harm reduction, including MAT, providing more than just a 12-step education for 30 days in treatment. And it's moving in that direction, and I some of my hardcore 12-step buddies, I've lost some 12-step cred with them because I like I said, I'm pretty liberal. Like I'm like, legalize all the drugs. Some people need mats, some people don't. Hey, we're going on a rabbit hole here, Chris. I think
it all comes back to like, to me, like it's not a rabbit hole at all, because it fortifies my desire to have this space, right, that is divergent from what we've seen before. I really do believe that all of those paths are valid. I believe that all those things are true and real. And I have had pushback from people that are hardcore 12-steppers. I had a group of 12-step folks come to the bar after their meeting, and they just were like, what is this? We don't think this is right. I'm just like, this isn't about recovery. This is about connection. And this is about absolutely.
So what were they taking offense to in the stands? I have an idea, but I'd like to hear. Okay.
So there was a misconception because surprise, they jumped to conclusions. Imagine us jumping to conclusions. But they thought that I was not in recovery, A. And B, they thought that I was saying that recovery wasn't enough, or that this was going to I was going to injure or hurt someone's recovery. And that's the opposite of why I created this. So I invited them to come in. I mean, it was a whole thing. I'll tell you off camera. They literally came to the bar with pitchforks and torches, and they were going to shut it down because this is wrong. This is wrong of you. And I was like, I've been sober for 10 years, and having a seltzer water and talking to a stranger has never gotten me drunk. I still go to meetings. I still, it was just a really interesting thing. And at the end of the night, they stayed, they had fun. They saw hey, there's karaoke, and has anyone done sober karaoke? Let's do some sober karaoke. They had a great time.
Yeah.
It was contempt prior to investigation. And they just assumed that this was negative. And it wasn't at all.
So, I'm realizing now we haven't officially said what Sans Bar is.
Yeah.
So for the viewers at home, Chris, tell them what Sans Bar is.
Okay, so on its face, it's all the bar without the booze. It is a space
I
where
like
you
that.
walk in and it feels like a bar. Doesn't smell like a bar, of course. It
Does
smells
it smell funky? No
smells
mildew
a lot
smell?
fresher. Smells a lot fresher than a bar. But yeah, we use the space that Recovery ATX uses. They use that space, and so on Friday nights it's Sands Bar, and that's what I love about it. The energy in that building feels special. It feels healing. It feels like this is where everyone belongs, and but it is a bar. So you walk in, the lights are nice and dim. We usually have some nice acoustic guitar playing, or some music playing on the speakers. And you look down the menu. There's some great drinks, and there's great bartenders who explain to you what the drinks are, and they walk you through this. All of my bartenders are trained in mental health first aid. Like, I can't, the clinician in you never really dies, right?
It's there.
Um,
Yeah.
So I understand that people are going to come into this space and they're going to be anxious. They're going to be worried. They're going to have that social anxiety. For a lot of people, this is their first time moving into a space without alcohol.
Yeah.
So that is what Sands Bar is. And we have a great time. And if you close your eyes on a busy Friday night, you would have no idea that you're not in a regular bar. It sounds just like any other bar in America. And it's the absolutely most beautiful thing. Again, miss being a clinician. I love working in detox. That was my favorite. Oh, if I had to go back today, I'd go to detox.
Detox is fun.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But I love the fact that people come into that space and they have a different experience. They hear all the things that trigger them, all the cues, right? The sounds, the smells, the opening of a can. And they get to pair that with something different today. They get to pair that with a good, sober experience. They get to make new friends. That is, Sands Bar is a giant classroom to rewire the brain, to teach the brain new ways of handling those cues.
I was about to say, like, does the clinician in you think about the neural pathways rewiring? And you just said it. You know what I thought of when you were talking is there's that really famous story in the Big Book. Well, I guess all the Big Book is famous, but when Bill's in the hotel lobby and he's by the payphone and he specifically talks about hearing the clinking of the glasses and the laughing and the chitter chatter of the crowd. And that was a huge trigger for him to where he was like, I got to find a drunk right now. Yeah. And what a beautiful way to take those triggers and build new stories around them, right? Build new experiences around them. I think that's so cool.
I never want anyone to live their entire life in fear of those cues. I never want someone to hear that or see that scene, because we know how the story goes. Sometimes you do go the opposite way. You don't go to the bar room, or you don't go to the house where the substance is that is a problem for you. Sometimes you go towards it and it ends in very bad situations. And I just want to remove that by retraining the brain. And that's really what Sands Bar is for me. I just dress it up like a bar. It looks like a bar, but this came from my own experience of watching hundreds of people go through integral care and struggle. And they would always say, I don't know how to do these things. I want to manage this attendant and social anxiety that I'm feeling, right? Where do we learn it? Sands Bar is a classroom.
I love it. So what was there, like, one specific moment that you can point to, like, where the idea was born or the decision was made? Yeah. Tell me the story. I got to hear it.
Yeah. Super clear. I just working with a person and working with a client, super duper, just awesome human being, early 30s, socially mobile, professional, great job, got in some trouble, did some court ordered treatment. And our last conversation was just this person saying, I don't know how I can be a parent and not go to the social circles and have the wine. I don't know how I can not drink during happy hour. Most importantly, I will always be alone. And I don't want to feel that loneliness. And that was a Friday. That's one of my last clients I saw on a Friday. On Monday, I found out that she didn't make it. And we're taught to accept that that's part of this job, right? Part of the job is we're gonna lose folks.
You're gonna watch people die. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I had done it before, right? It wasn't anything. It was like year 8 of my clinical career. But that bothered me because I was like, nope, we can do something about that. Loneliness should never be the cause of death for anyone. And that day, I think I filed my LLC paperwork. I was like, I have to do something. I had no money. I started with $200. I had no business experience, no bartend. I had never bartended in my life. I hadn't stepped in a bar since I was 20. Like, I didn't know anything about a bar, but I was like, we're not going to lose another person because they have to pick between their lives or belonging. That's just not, we shouldn't be, as an industry, we should never be okay with that. And then say like, oh, the person just wasn't ready. Like,
oh, I hate that. I hate that they weren't ready. Shit. Sorry. But it's true. I think we could go off on a whole thing with that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a beautiful story of inspiration. But so, in my mind, I remember hearing about Sands Bar. I remember Shane Cunningham was like, have you heard of the Sands Bar thing? This is probably what, 5-6 years ago, maybe? It was long. And, I look at the news today, and every day I can find an article about like the sober curious movement, and how not the millennials, but like the Gen Zers. There's a lot of them that are basically straight edge without being straight edge, and you can find Topo Chico in every gas station. Most restaurants at this point have at least a mocktail on their menu. Right. I was sharing with you, I went on that cruise and there was a mocktail pairing for a 7-course meal. But in my mind, you were the first person. Oh, and I get ads on Facebook for non-alcoholic spirits now, like all these different companies coming out. But in my mind, you were kind of the first person I ever heard kind of talking about this. Do you see yourself as a pioneer? Are you?
Yeah. I mean, not on purpose, right? Like I didn't mean to like do this. I literally, again, I don't have another origin story. I can't say like, oh, I had this bright idea and I like, no, it came from a very hurtful place. And I tell you what, not a week goes by that I don't think about that client and the good that I wish that they could see that has happened because of our last conversation. But there was no other sober bars in America. And I didn't realize that at the time. So I was really the first. And then people started to ask how they could do it. And I started, of course, like believing that people need to be empowered to do things because, clinician, and started to empower people across the country. They started opening their own sober bars. And a lot of people did it on their own too. It wasn't all me, but a lot of people did it on their own. But from that, this interest, rose up. And my friend Ruby Warrington wrote a book in 2017 called Sober Curious. And that's where the term sober curious came. And then suddenly,
the person that made that term up.
Yeah, Ruby Warrington.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. She's
sorry, I cut you off. Yeah.
No. Super cool person. But she coined the phrase the same month that I came up with Sands Bar. And so it was like this weird, like perfect timing.
Yeah.
Where Sands Bar was a thing, Sober Curious was a thing. And then all these drinks came to the market. And that's when we saw this explosion of NA drinks. It is still, for the third year in a row, the fastest growing segment of the beverage market.
Wow.
It is the fastest growing segment. It's outpacing sodas. It's outpacing liquor. It's outpacing beer. Non-alc is by far and away exploding at the seams right now.
Yeah, you'll appreciate this. So once again, on a cruise, I was, on cruises, you tell them kind of if you drink or don't drink and kind of some of your preferences, and they kind of know it about you. So they brought me a water menu that had 10 fancy, like regular still waters and 10 flat waters. And it was like, this flat water is from Spain and it, has high mineral content and whatever. And this sparkling is from Japan. And it's
Yes.
just like a wine menu. And I felt good about that.
Hey, there are some very expensive waters out there. There's a $10,000 water.
Oh man, I think I spent like $15 on a
bottle. There are some. I mean, the most I spent on one, I spent $50 on a bottle of water, just because I was like, okay, what does a $50 bottle of water taste like? How could it be that good? I can't $50, and I have to tell you, it was like a glacier. Like, it was like the most fresh water I've ever tasted in my life. Worth
like it was worth it.
It was worth it. It was like, this is what water is supposed to. It has no taste, but it has a taste.
Yeah,
it was worth it. So water, high quality water, is a thing. Bobby Boucher, it really is a thing.
So you made me think of this, and I probably wouldn't mention it, but I feel like you're the kind of guy that would be into it. There's this phenomenon that I forget the word for it, but basically throughout human history, there has been this thing that happens where different people in different parts of the world, in different cultures, arrive at the same brand new idea at the same time. So like, the DNA splitting technology, CRISPR?
Yes.
So apparently 3 different teams of scientists discovered it almost simultaneously back in 2013 or something like that. When atoms were first discovered, they were simultaneously discovered in 4 different laboratories. And so when you talk about I came up with Sandsbar and Ruby Warrington came up with Sober Curious, and the way the movement seems to have sprung up to where there's sober bars all over the place now. I think I like to believe that humanity collectively was ready to kind of evolve this idea. So
I think so too. I think it was, and you think about it, it was exactly 100 years after Prohibition. So it was 100 years after we had this failed experiment about how to talk about alcohol. This collective consciousness sort of started thinking about it a different way. So, I was here in Austin working on Sandsbar. Ruby Warrington was working on Sober Curious. This guy named Ben Branson in the UK was creating a non-alcoholic distillate, the first ever, right? Which would become this new line of alcohol-free spirits. But I couldn't survive without a product like that, or the term Sober Curious. Ruby probably would have been fine with sober. She had a brilliant idea in Sober Curious, but we all kind of had this thing happen at the same time. And it's been really cool to see how this thing has evolved. I don't know how history will remember Sandsbar, but I want to continue to grow this concept. I want there to be a sober bar in every city in the world.
Oh, I love it. I think you can get there. I mean, there's an AA meeting in every city in the world, right? So why can't there be a sober bar? We're getting close to the end of our time, and man, there's just so many more questions I have for you, man. This is probably a loaded one to ask with such little time left. But what do you say when people say, you're glamorizing alcohol for the recovering addicts? Yeah, I'm sure that's something you've heard
all the time. And first of all, I tell the story of how I got started. And then the next thing I always talk about is just the statistics, which is the last time so from time to time, we do a polling of people who attend Sandsbar on, a regular basis, meaning more than twice a month. Mm-hmm. And of those people, 75% of the people that regularly come to Sandsbar do not identify as being sober or being in recovery.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So most of those people are just non-drinkers because of religion or because of choice. A lot of people in it, it's still hard for me to wrap my head around it, but they just don't want to drink. They just not a fan of it. They tried it, don't really like it. A lot of people are just giving themselves a break for dry January or because they're training for a marathon, because they're nursing. There are a million reasons why people don't drink other than substance use dependence. And that, I think, is how Sandsbar has worked to break down stigma. We talk a lot about ending stigma. And I think stigma does not really end until the general population can be with us in a space and we're not saying anything other than welcome. You know, when this is a space where everyone is truly welcome and it really is about connecting to everyone, that is when I think stigma ends. And so many people come to Sandsbar saying like, my favorite nights are when someone's like, hey, we're here to celebrate my friend's 30 days. But, you know, all 5 of us, we drink. We're just here to support them. Like that to me is how you end stigma, because what that person sees is that my friends came to support me. They believe in me, but we don't have to like sacrifice our sense of fun or going out because we're not drinking tonight. We're going to go out and have a good time. We're going to dance. We're going to listen to comedy or see a drag show. We're going to do something fun. We're just not going to have alcohol. And we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to remember all of it.
I love it. Okay, so I got one more question. This is a personal one for me. So, because I like to order mocktails, you know, my wife is normal. She gets drinks, you know, real alcoholic drinks. So I like to order something to feel on her level. But I'm also trying to watch my figure. And so many of those mocktails it's a lot of sugar. So I would love to hear a recommendation, maybe a recipe perhaps, of like a not sugary mocktail.
Well, I mean, if you're out and about so pro tip number 1, I know we have a few minutes left. I would not order drinks at a bar that doesn't have a mocktail menu, just because you never want to get any confusion. You never want to, that you think it's a mocktail, it's a cocktail. Like you don't want that to happen. So
I once had a sip of a drink that I thought had no alcohol.
Yeah. So I'm always like, unless the menu has a mocktail, I caution people, it just messes up the experience. And then the other thing I would say is that you can find, especially if it's like a Sandsbar where we have a ton of like products that are non-alcoholic, you can do like an alcohol-free, sugar-free, calorie-free gin and tonic. There's, you know, the tequilas and the rums and all the other things have no sugar in them at all, no calories in them, because a lot of these brands understand that it's about having a better for you product, right?
Yeah.
And even if that's not your jam, like I'm drinking right now this like sparkling lime and ginger drink, right? Like it's just ginger and sparkling ginger and lime. That's cool too, because it's got no calories and no sugar, right? Like it's perfectly, you know, cool. So there's stuff out there, usually not beers, but there are drinks you can drink and make at home. That's the other thing. Please go get some of these things, play with them, make up your own concoctions. Like there's nothing you can do wrong. Like if it's about creating a fun drink to celebrate your recovery or your decision to drink less or no alcohol, you can't go wrong.
Love it. Okay, so we like to wrap things up with a little segment that we call rapid fire question.
Okay, all right.
It's rapid fire question time.
All right, Chris, I got 5 questions for you. Try to answer them as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Right. Who's your favorite Spice Girl?
Scary Spice.
What do you order at Whataburger?
Breakfast taquito with bacon and cheese.
Nice. Single greatest concert experience ever?
Coldplay at ACL.
Oh, real quick story. Coldplay was up against Kanye that year.
Yes.
And I forced my wife to go to Kanye. And to this day, we both regret that choice.
Because that man yelled "Mama" for 30 minutes, and I heard him on the other end of it. I remember. Oh my gosh, I remember that. That man yelled "Mama" for 30 minutes on stage.
Yeah, that was like 2013, 2014, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
I probably would have dinner with. You know what? I'd probably have dinner with my grandpa. He's still living, but yeah, he thinks the world of me. He's so proud of my sobriety, and it means a big deal to me. So yeah, probably my grandpa.
All right. Last question: if you could be any other animal, let's say you reincarnated today, and you got to pick what creature you would come back as, what would it be?
I'm gonna go with wallaby.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Rocco? Was
Rocco?
Rocco?
I'm just kidding. I would be a horse. I absolutely love horses. Equine therapy. See, there you go. When I was a big buzzword. But no, horses. Yes, it's a horse. It'd be a horse. I love horses.
Yeah. Love it. And last but not least, Chris, you've got a platform right now, where, this lives on YouTube and all kinds of different places. What's like the last final thought you'd like to leave our audience with as we wrap up today's episode?
Yeah, I just like to leave the thought that we need a world where we're less alone. I feel like that is what we are in need of, is connection, deep connection. Although we seem to be very connected because of technology, I think we're really disconnected, and we miss heart-to-heart connection. That's what I'm about. That's what Sandsbar is about. That's what my recovery's been about. It's all about making those connections.
Love it. Well, thank you again, Chris, for your time today. It was such a great conversation. It just flew by for me.
Yeah.
And I hope I know we'll be running into each other at events, from here until forever, right? So,
hey, we gotta actually hang out, because I haven't. We gotta talk. We have a lot in common. And
chop it up off camera.
Yeah, we gotta talk.
We'll make it happen. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything you do, for the work you bring, for the light you bring to the world, for Sandsbar and all the good things that have sprung from it. And as we like to say here on Talksicology, there's 1,000 ways in, there's 1,000 ways out. We hope you find yours.